Welcome everyone. We are here on the weekly crypto recap, coming to you live. On this show, as you know, we go through all of the latest news in crypto from the week. There's a lot to get through this week, and I am absolutely delighted to invite onto the show for the first time Jason Nelson, aka Dragon Wolf Tech. Welcome to the show.
Hi Naomi, thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. As I always say, you have the best memes on crypto Twitter. So if you guys aren't following him on Instagram, make sure that you are. And welcome back to the show, Zapoid, aka Chris Carabats of Smart Cash.
Always happy to be here. It's the highlight of my week.
Highlight of my week, because I get to chat to wonderful people in the chat here and on the show and talk about crypto things, and that's kind of how I live my life. So let's get straight into it. To start off with, so I just put a tweet out on Twitter right now, and it was talking about some potential scary things coming up in the future. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have seen my interview with Robert Murphy. He does the wonderful Contra Krugman podcast with Tom Woods. If you guys don't know that, then check it out. But he came on my show not too long ago. We were talking about the potential recession coming in the US economy and potentially the global economy, and how the inversion of the yield curves is sort of this sign of an inevitable recession. Now, we were looking at the curves and looking at them getting closer and closer together, and when we say that, we're talking about the gap between 3-month and 10-year US yields. So that actually happened today. They actually inverted for the first time since 2007, and Robert Murphy was saying that apparently this is a very well-known sign that bad things are going to happen in the economy, because this has just kind of been this very consistent sign in the past. So what are your thoughts about that, guys? It's a little bit terrifying.
The yield curve has been a reliable pre-recession indicator for the last 50-ish years. I think the last time it didn't indicate a recession was 1966, and that recession didn't come until 1969. So it's one of those things that, it's not necessarily causing a recession, just an indicator that shows that people have more demand for long-term treasury bonds, thus driving the percentage yield of those bonds down, because the treasury doesn't have to pay as high of a rate to get people to buy them. That's why the 10-year rate goes down, because more people want to buy them. Unlike everything else you buy where more people want to buy and the price goes up, you have to think about it a little bit backwards because of what it actually is. Now, what we have today is the 10-year fell below both the 1-year and the 3-month. And it has since come back up some. So right now, the 3-month is at 2.44%, the 12-month is at 2.45%, and the 10-year is at 2.45%. So we still have the 2-year and the 5-year that's below anything below it, but the 10-year has uninverted. So we didn't close trading inverted. Whether or not that matters in this great game we play of looking at indicators, I don't know. But it's not a great sign of the strength of the market.
It isn't indeed. And in my video, so I titled the video that we did, a US market crash is coming, but crypto might save us. Now, this is sort of, this is a tricky area as well. So we're looking at the US economy, we're looking at all the things that might crash. You've got stocks, you've got houses, you've got, US dollar. All of these things are not... they're not sure things, right? And these are definitely things that fluctuate during difficult times and recessions. And a lot of people say, well, crypto, that'll save us. Like, it is interesting because this will be the first recession that we have. If it comes, it's not for sure, but it seems pretty likely that something like that's on the horizon, especially because interest rates have been held so low for so long. But if this comes, it'll be the first one we've had since we've had cryptocurrency. So that's going to be very interesting. And I mean, it's not necessarily going to save us though, because once, if your stocks are going down or if your US dollar is going down, I mean, you're gonna want to take your money out of the most liquid assets, right? You're gonna want to take probably your money out of crypto, which is probably going to tank crypto as well. Now, the difference is that at the end of the day, what are we going to have more faith in? Are we going to have more faith in a cryptocurrency that is controlled by mathematics and isn't at the whim of a Federal Reserve that could do, a whole bunch more TARP bailouts like they did last time. And we're already, how many trillions of dollars in debt? 22 or something like that. And we're going to have all of the, I presume, massive bailouts again, because these banks are probably not going to withstand another recession. I mean, it doesn't seem like they've changed many of their policies that led to them getting bailed out last time. So, it's not, I mean, we don't really know what's going to happen. It's going to be interesting, and I don't really know what advice to give people.
I'm horribly bad at scheduling these things. I thought for sure we'd have one in 2015, 2016. I'm just bad at this,
Instead, we had a giant bull run in crypto.
Yes. And I don't know how that affected the macro things. It's interesting how all these little things affect one another. As you said, before the 2008 recession, gold tanked like 20%, then recovered a lot more and then came back down again. So I would fully expect the same thing to happen in the crypto line if we were to get a recession. That being said, a lot of macro stuff is different. I mean, right now we have the Fed that instead of saying we were a completely strong economy, they were going to raise rates. They said there'll be no more rate hikes in 2019 and there might be one in 2020, which is incredibly bearish. Plenty of people are saying that the S&P is in a bear market right now. We have the ECB that just announced they're going to continue quantitative easing. And back to the US, we have the Treasury that stopped shrinking its order books. And right now, the Treasury still has something like $5 trillion worth of assets on its books, up from under $1 trillion before the last recession. And it's losing money on these assets now. So overall, we'll see the US go into negative interest rate land if we have another recession, which will bring all sorts of interesting things. And that would in turn be good for crypto, I would think, because why keep your money in a bank account if they're just going to take money from you to do it?
That's a really great point, and people are learning that more and more. I think that fractional reserve banking, it's becoming a thing that people are more cognizant of, although there needs to be a whole lot more education there so that people realize, banks don't necessarily have your money. You can't necessarily get it out of there when you need it. So I'm very interested to see how cryptocurrency affects this upcoming potential turmoil that we're going to see in the economy.
The only thing that my concern is when people, right now, you're seeing a lot of companies rolling out stable coins, and these stable coins are tied to the US dollar. So what people need to understand is that if the economy tanks, those cryptocurrencies that are tied to fiat are going to go with it. So you have people who are going to jump into crypto thinking it's better than being in fiat, when they're going to probably jump into JP Morgan coin, and the economy is going to tank and their crypto is going to go to whatever the rate ends up being. And then they're going to get mad at crypto.
Why is anyone going to jump into JP Morgan coin? Because it's like, hey, the banks don't have your money. You can't trust them with US dollars. Oh, but I'm going to trust them with my cryptocurrency.
We do have to remember that people jump into what they know.
Right, so, but they don't know JP Morgan coin. I mean, this is a very strange new phenomenon that is.
But they know JP Morgan.
Right, the JP Morgan that just lost all their money when there was a bank run and they didn't have it there.
Well, that's my point. Is they're gonna go. JP Morgan are one of these banks. Is going to tell them you need to diversify your assets, get into crypto. It's aside from the U.S. market. It's just what they're going to tell them. But then it's going to tank right along with it because it's a stable coin.
We're going to have to see about that. We'll have to see what happens.
That's interesting. That's an interesting thought. Instead of having a bank have to deal with a bank run, they can just say, hey, don't worry about getting your dollars out. We're just going to give you our JP Morgan coin instead.
Right.
And
exactly.
That's an interesting strategy that the banks could use to try to get around a bank run. Whether or not people will fall for it's another question. But
then you have to ask, what is that JP Morgan coin going to be worth on the open market if something like that happens? Because that they're just printing these things out of thin air, and printing, it's not like it's backed by anything, or that you're printing it every time a US dollar is handed in. Right. So I just wonder, is this just going to have no value on the open market because people won't want to buy this? It's interesting. It's a completely new world, right?
Yeah.
Well,
it'll be It'll be banked. It'll be backed by the government likelihood to bail out J.P. Morgan.
Yeah, exactly.
By a
Right.
direct
Exactly.
line of
Right.
Fed,
Right. Yeah.
backed by a direct line of credit to the Fed.
Right.
Right. So let's move on. We've got a lot of stuff to cover, but I did just want to start off right with that because that is breaking news that happened today, and I think that it's incredibly important, especially because crypto was created after all of the economic turmoil that happened in 2008. So yeah, let's hope that this is a better situation for citizens, for everyday people now that we have an alternative. We'll have to see. So now we get into all the rest of our news, I want to give a shout out to Crypto Insider. So I announced on the shows last week, the week before, I now started a partnership with Crypto Insider and getting a lot of our news from the Crypto Insider page. If you want to know what's going on in cryptocurrency and the blockchain space, and they are a wonderful go-to source for all of your crypto news. So delighted to partner with them for a weekly news show. It's like a perfect fit. So a huge thank you to them for being part of this. And I'll be posting all of the links that we source from them in the information below in the video after we're done. So you can check out those if you want to read more about anything. So so now let's go to Jack Dorsey. We've been talking about him a lot recently. He's kind of been making waves in crypto, and he's it's kind of interesting, right? So his latest thing, and I have to give a hat tip to him because it's very smart of him to do this. He put out this tweet. He says, Bitcoin Twitter and crypto Twitter. I've never heard of Bitcoin Twitter, actually, but I'm impressed that he knows about crypto Twitter, the lingo there. So he says, Square is hiring 3 to 4 crypto engineers and 1 designer to work full-time on open source contributions to the Bitcoin crypto ecosystem. Work from anywhere, report directly to me, and we can even pay you in Bitcoin. Introducing SQ Crypto. Why? Last week, I was considering my Hack Week project and asked Brock M what is the most impactful thing we could do for the Bitcoin community. His answer was simple: pay people to make the broader crypto ecosystem better. This resonated with me immediately, and so we're doing it. So I like that. It seems very benevolent and altruistic, but it's very much in his best interest to do this because crypto is going to become a part of all of the major social media platforms. Crypto is going to be a part of all of our lives. All of the big players, if they're smart, they're going to be contributing to a lot of these open source projects. The same way that a lot of things in traditional computing are open source, and you have IBM that is contributing developers who are contributing to the space. You have Apple who's doing the same thing. You have Microsoft. You have all of these, Amazon. You have all of these people who contribute because basically you don't want one single company contributing to some of these open source projects, because then the projects can kind of get co-opted. They can be creating products that are more beneficial just to Apple if there's just Apple developers working on it, and to the detriment of competitors. So having a lot of different people contributing to these projects, I think, is very smart, and is definitely one of the good things about the open market. So well, what are our thoughts?
The part that I like about it is that he's offering to pay people in Bitcoin. And if a company is going to pay you in Bitcoin, they have to deal with the taxes that go along with paying a person to work in, like, for example, the United States, right? So what that does is it takes not necessarily the responsibility, but it takes the weight of determining how much tax you have to pay out of your hands, because Square has to figure that out. So while you have to still do your own, tax, jump through your own tax hoops, right? At least you don't have to worry about that.
Any thoughts on that, Chris?
Hiring 4 people to work on the wider crypto or Bitcoin ecosystem is a positive. Square is trying to keep moving in that space. They are sponsoring Bitcoin podcasts. They are doing various things like that. So they are involved in the ecosystem. This is a bit more than the virtue signaling he seemed to do by saying he was buying $10,000 of Bitcoin a week. I mean, again, to put some perspective on the $10,000, I feel like we didn't do a good enough job on that. Him spending $10,000 a week on Bitcoin is less than somebody making $100,000 a year spending 1 penny a week on Bitcoin. That's what $10,000 a week means to him.
Yeah, that's
Nothing.
true.
So having 4 people, I mean, he probably employs upwards of 10,000 people across all his various ventures. So 4 people dedicated to Bitcoin, that's good. And hopefully you get the right kind of, dedicated crypto people to work on the space. That'll be nice. His full on into Bitcoin and Lightning is not something I'm a huge fan of, but I'll probably talk more about Lightning later. I like the fact that we'll have more people potentially working full-time on the Bitcoin space outside of the established players. So if this gets somebody new in the space, that maybe adds some competition there and maybe adds some slight adversarial relationship to the coding in Bitcoin, that would be a good thing from my perspective.
Yeah.
But this in my mind, this really does tie into a lot of what's going on in the wider area. We're seeing more and more and more companies getting involved in the crypto and Bitcoin space. And that's just something that is great to happen during the bear market, because it'll drag more and more people into it when we start the upswing again.
Right.
Well, you also have to consider that something that might help to the mass adoption that we're all hoping for is if jobs are created that people can do that are in the crypto ecosystem, right? Because you want people to not think of it as this abstract thing that only lives on the internet. If it's going to be mass adoption, people have to be able to view it as something similar to what they deal with on a daily basis.
Yep, exactly. Absolutely. That's why I'm in the space, is real world usage adoption, usage as a medium of exchange, creating full ecosystems so people can buy stuff at retailers, so retailers can buy stuff from their wholesalers, and so they can pay their employees all in crypto to create a full ecosystem. This is part of that full ecosystem and an important step. I agree.
Yeah. So, and Chris, just move your camera up a little bit because we're missing your beautiful chin. We can't see it.
What?
Your chin. It's cut off from the bottom of the camera. So you got to just move that up a little bit.
I see my full head plus shoulders in my own shot, so this is weird. No,
because the screen capture in the thingy cuts it off. That's the technical definition of what's going on. So let's keep moving. We've got lots more interesting stuff. So CoinMarketCap, they released 2 crypto indices, and they released them on NASDAQ, Bloomberg, and Reuters. That's pretty exciting. So the first one is called CMC 200. It includes Bitcoin. It covers more than 90% of the global cryptocurrency market, and 200, obviously, it's choosing the top 200 coins in their CoinMarketCap listing. And then we've got the CMC 200 EX, it tracks the market's performance without the influence of Bitcoin. So these are going to be great data tools, I think, for people. It's pretty exciting that they release.
Well, they also have the grade feature now, where you can get, like, if it's a ABC type rating, right? So people are trying to come up with new ways to be able to tell which one of these things they should get involved with.
Yeah, though the grade thing, I could talk about that for too long too, based on how they're actually grading projects.
Let's talk about that a little bit though, Chris. It sounds like you have something to say there.
Well, I was reading, basically I saw the grade. It's very interesting to see how they do things. They grade very heavily on certain base levels of activity, like basically 6 levels. You have the activity on the blockchain, you have how long the blockchain's been in existence, you have how active is the GitHub, and a few other popularity-based things. And it rates some projects very high that I don't feel deserve to be quite high, and some projects very, very low that I feel like, you have projects like Horizon that are ranked F, which I think Horizon is definitely above a lot of the things that are higher than that. But they also don't really grade things very well, like additional feature sets. Like, basically every blockchain isn't the same. You have all the features that are added on top of the blockchain. And it's very, if you have just one plain vanilla blockchain versus another blockchain that does all sorts of different things, they'll be graded. That won't even be looked at when you're looking at the grade. So it's very difficult to just look at this score and actually have an understanding of what the project is about and how worthy it might be for investing. Yeah. So but it also is very useful because you see CoinMarketCap trying to leverage their position in the crypto space to join up with traditional financial indexes and industries like Solactive. They're a well-known name, at least in Europe, for having these indexes, and they want to eventually make a NASDAQ or a Dow 500 off of crypto as well that are available to the wider market. And CoinMarketCap isn't necessarily worried about how accurate or in-depth these indexes are, so much as they can say they have them and they can sell themselves better to places like Solactive.
Yeah, and we've got to worry about accountability systems or ranking systems like that, because we got into a huge amount of trouble during the last the housing crash with ratings agencies and this sort of cartel that have emerged in the rating, like mortgage rating agency and all of that. I mean, it was like a giant mess with very little oversight and accountability. So I am just wondering whether there are third-party organizations out there that are kind of monitoring this stuff as CoinMarketCap tries to differentiate itself and emerge as you said, Chris, as this main player joining with traditional financial tools like that. I hope that there are accountability systems out there and people watching it to say like, hey, how did you get this rating? It kind of seems arbitrary. Like, I didn't know, so they put Horizon as an F.
Yep, and Smart Cash too, for that matter.
Really?
We're 1 point away from a C. It's yeah.
Wow.
I dug into it a bunch last year. I'm trying to talk to them. They haven't gotten back to me on.
Well, I hope they do. That's kind of disappointing that they're looking at good projects and kind of overlooking them, I should say. And I hope that this doesn't become like a pay-to-play method where,
Never.
No, that wouldn't happen. Like, that's why I hope...
In our financial system, no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that at all, and CoinMarketCap provides a great tool for all of us. I'm sure we're all using their tool where they list everything by the market cap. But I just hope, I know that these things can be a slippery slope, so I just hope that there are accountability systems out there to get rid of temptation in that area, and just to provide peace of mind with people who are perhaps using this grading
we're
systems.
At right now, we seem to be one level away from that. We're developing this ecosystem, and we're developing these rating indices, but we don't have any accountability organizations underneath them. So it really is kind of still a crapshoot as to how valuable any of these individual rating systems are and how they're really judging. I mean, you get a bunch of people just looking at crypto Twitter and figuring out how many times it's mentioned and using some analytics to decide whether that tweet was positive or negative. What does that even mean, about how valuable a project is? So it'll take time to keep building this stuff up in demand. So if we insist that people are more transparent and accountable for their ratings, then that will hopefully help develop those processes better.
Absolutely. And a lot of the time with some of these products is we can be very demanding as consumers and very entitled as consumers and say, hey, you put out this system, but it's not what I would want from this system, and therefore you must appease me. And on the one hand, yeah, great, their system's not good enough and all of this, but at the same time, they're putting out a product. It's a product. If you do want to influence it at all, you do have to be vocal and get things moving and reach out to them and let them know and give feedback. You can't just kind of sit back and bitch about things and expect that they'll create products that you think are perfect. So yeah, get involved and provide that feedback and pushback that the companies need, so that they do provide the transparency that we look for as consumers.
Right.
So let's move on. I want to talk about, this is a really interesting thing. So North Korean revolutionaries turned to crypto to oust Kim Jong-un. So, I mean, when I first read this article, I kind of dismissed it, and I was like, this is ridiculous. People are doing this ICO and they're going to save North Korea. But you kind of look into it a little bit more. So basically they're selling visas for cryptocurrency, for Ethereum, I believe it is. And for one, you get a visa for one Ethereum, I think it is. Right. But what made me interested in this organization is it's actually an existing organization that has done some interesting things. So they were actually responsible for rescuing the son of Kim Jong-nam. So that is the half-brother of Kim Jong-un, and he was famously assassinated. And then they were worried that they were actually going to go after this half-brother's son as well. And so this organization came in and they rescued him. So they are responsible for doing, they're not just like talking, they're actually out there doing things that they believe are helping to free North Korea. So they're calling this new place that they're building Free Joseon, I think it's pronounced. Now, what are your thoughts on all of this, guys?
Well, when I first saw it, my first thing was, okay, obviously this is a scam. That was my first thought, right? Because you're selling visas to a country that doesn't exist, yet, right? So it just didn't sit right with me. I questioned it from as soon as I saw it, really.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because you could say that an ICO is selling tokens to a product that doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, so that's true. And I thought of that, and that's true. But this is a country that's going to emerge after a revolution, and you're going up against a dictator that most people consider insane. So, the likelihood that this is going to end the way you want it to is pretty slim.
I love ICO to crowdfund a revolution. The concept is so cyberpunk that
it ticks so many boxes, right?
Yeah,
it's just like
it's
all
just
the decentralized things.
I just need to plug into the internet now. I'm good.
Yeah. Who these people are? I mean, they've supposedly done stuff. They apparently have a bit of a history. I am very surprised I haven't heard of them before. I guess I'd have to try to get Michael Malice to comment on this as the expert of North Korea. But
that would be an interesting segment.
That would be. I have no idea if he's aware of these people at all, but him not being aware of them would be a telling big mark against them, I think. But it's nice using ERC 721 tokens, which is kind of cool. Basically, they're non-fungible tokens. Where an ERC 20 token is a fungible token, ERC 721 is a non-fungible token. So it is a digital item that's guaranteed to be itself unique, which is a good way to do a visa, I guess. They're only asking 1 ETH. It's honestly tempting to get one just because, of course, then I could probably never actually get into North Korea.
Right.
Because I have one.
Well, you could frame it at least.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be one of those things that'd be fun to have.
Frame it and say you supported the revolution.
There you go.
If they're successful based on this, that would be really awesome. They've only received 14 Bitcoin at their Bitcoin address, and
apparently they've received no donations on their Ethereum donation address.
Yeah. I'm pulling it up again because maybe it's changed since. Oh, they have received 0.101 ETH now since the article has come out, and 14.2 BTC. So they got at least a little bit more out of this article. So good for them. But it's a very interesting prospect. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy for people living in North Korea. This is the closest thing to hell on earth that we have on Earth right now. It is amazingly sad how the people there are treated, and how they're brainwashed, and how ignorant they are about the rest of the world. And it's very hard for them. That's why whatever you may think about Trump in general, the fact that he is at least somewhat seems to have enabled North and South Korea to talk. They have started bringing up landmines from the demilitarized zone, which was the most militarized place on Earth for the last however many years. Right. So that's good too. Anytime you're digging up landmines between two countries, I think is a positive thing. Overall, it's interesting. I just have no clue about this particular rebel group and how likely.
I mean, we've seen cases of people using crypto to, get around, I don't know, sanctions, embargoes, whatever. Like Venezuela, for example, people are receiving crypto as opposed to the bolivar, right? So, I mean, the idea of sending cryptocurrency to a country that's, under an oppressive regime, so that those people can live their lives that the regime won't let them live. I think that's a good thing that, you know, could be explored.
Absolutely.
But when you're...
So let's talk a little bit about that before we move on, because we can't scoff at this sort of thing immediately. Like, we're unsure about the organization. Obviously, it requires a lot of research. Let's not just throw our money into some scam thing. But we can't scoff at the idea of cryptocurrency and these new tools at our disposal being used to free people from oppressive regimes.
Right.
That's exactly what this is for, you know? So when we see someone doing this in practice, let's embrace it. Let's look into it and see if there's some way we can support this kind of thing.
Right. But
yeah, absolutely.
I do have to always grain of salt anything that says we're going to go up against somebody, because I mean, you can get a lot of money by cashing Bitcoin into fiat, but not enough to buy tanks and things like that unless you just happen to have that much. And so using it to support to support people who aren't able to take care of themselves is one thing. Using it to fund a revolution, that's a next level right there.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what happens, but yeah, I'll definitely look into more of this and keep you guys posted, and perhaps get Michael Malice on the show.
On the one final comment, at least it's better than for the last couple of years where you see endless articles about North Korea mining Bitcoin to get around sanctions. That's in the government itself. So it's better.
And I don't know if you noticed in that article at the bottom, someone said that it's a Kim Jong-un trick to get money out of people to fund his missile program. Somebody put that in the comments.
Oh dear.
That's the problem. We got to figure that out.
Right. So let's move on. Next topic we want to talk to. So Bitcoin fraudster duped Italian investors out of $300,000 in gold and crypto. Just want to touch on this briefly. So just be aware of scams in the space. This is another one to be aware of, and there are similar things out there. So basically, he impersonated a company that exists in Switzerland and kind of passed himself off as a market representative. And this company is like a reputable crypto investment firm. So he was trying to get people to send him details and money and gold and all of these things, and it turned out that he was a fraudster. The actual company that is the real company found out and got some law enforcement involved to track him down, and they eventually caught him. So what are your thoughts on this?
Go ahead.
So, you know, he scammed people for money. I mean, he got more gold than he got crypto. So, you know, I mean, people use stuff like this to badmouth crypto, but, you know, scammers will scam. I mean, this is a very standard thing that people do. I like how they arrested him while he was receiving some gold at the hotel.
My thing is, okay, people need to do their own research, and it's not just crypto that you need to do your research on. It's also the people telling you to invest in it. Okay, you have to. What you had here was ignorance and FOMO mixed together, right? Because you have a person who is basically saying, you know, I can do this for you, I can do that for you, but you weren't checking on who this person was. Now, in their defense, he did use stolen information from a company that, if you do it right, would make you look semi-legit. But you still have to do your own research and your own due diligence to make sure that you check on the people who are telling you they're going to handle your money.
It is a difficult situation because scam artists make a living by looking legit. That's what they do for a living. They look legit. So it is very difficult to discern bad players from good players sometimes. And sometimes you do need other opinions from people that you trust. Sometimes the people you trust may not even be legit people. So it's a very difficult field to navigate, and just be real careful is the moral of that story.
I mean, in fairness, Bernie Madoff fooled how many people?
Yeah.
So, I mean, come on. Right?
No, but we had all that regulation from the government protecting us from Bernie.
Yes.
Thank you, government.
Yeah.
You are.
One more law will protect us all.
The other aside from this article that I thought was interesting is that Italy itself is the only Eurozone country to be currently in recession zone.
Right, I saw that. Yeah.
They are the first of the European, I say first as if it's inevitable to happen to all the rest, which I think it is.
Yeah.
But they are the first of the
And
European
maybe the
countries.
US first.
Who knows? But the Italy is the first to be in a recession. So, they're claiming that people there are more potentially vulnerable to this or more likely to try to pull scams. I don't care about that. But it's just the first of these nations to start getting really into the danger zone, despite what the ECB is trying to do with continued low interest rates and quantitative easing. So it's going to be interesting.
Indeed. Let's move on. So you had some big movements in crypto recently. We did see BTC pass the 4,000 mark this week, which was interesting. And then Bitcoin and Ethereum whales apparently moved $103 million in crypto this week. So tell me a little bit about that, Chris.
Well, it's more movement among very large addresses that may or may not have touched recently. You have a lot moving into or between exchanges, but you also have a lot that it's coming out of exchanges into unknown wallets. So, when you have 225,000 ETH leaving Poloniex into an unknown wallet, that is potentially a new whale or a whale that came in and decided to get something there. It just, from my perspective, it shows that we are increasing interest, we're increasing volume. We talked briefly about volume last week, and that those high volume levels have continued, though unfortunately I just saw a news article come across my desk where what was that? One of the companies told the SEC that 95% of crypto volume is fake, so whatever that means, if we can believe them. But so our volume overall is back to where it was during the height of the bull market in December and January. And considering the prices are far lower now, that means that a lot more volume of the individual coins is being traded than was being traded then. So we have a lot more activity. A lot of people are looking at these indicators and saying we're at a bottom based on these movements, based on the increased volume. Am I going to guarantee we're at the bottom? No, I am relatively optimistic based on these indicators. I'd be more optimistic if we're above 4,000 at this instant, but we're not. And it's just very interesting with the whale movement of coins. Because there's a lot of money we're talking about from at least my perspective.
Yeah, my only thing I want to add to that is if you notice they're only moving Bitcoin and Ethereum. You don't see any of the other named cryptocurrencies really being bought, even though people on crypto Twitter are telling you it's alt season. Ethereum,
Yeah, I guess I'd have to. I haven't done that math in head yet. The Bitcoin dominance has continued to fall slightly. We're at 50.7% now. So we're edging up to that 50% dominance. Of course, you keep in mind that at the height of alt season, we were at, if I want to say, 33% dominance or something like that. So we have a long way to go until we get there.
Right.
But overall, it just seems to be a lot more activity going on. We've talked briefly about all these other companies moving into the crypto space, and the overall sentiment appears to be positive. What that means, who knows? Maybe the whales will come along and give us a good kick in the pants, and we'll find a new low again, because we can never really determine this, guarantee this. But the sentiment seems to be turning.
Indeed.
And keep in mind that the quantitative easing and the lowering of interest rates ends up reducing volatility in the traditional markets, which makes the crypto markets more attractive to some of the traditional investors as well. So there's some tie-in there too.
Right.
Right. Let's move on. So IBM signed 6 banks to issue stablecoins and use Stellar's XLM cryptocurrency. So we've got a lot of competing large players now in this ecosystem, and they're using a bunch of different protocols, and it's nice to see competition there. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, for me, it kind of goes back to the whole question of stable coins versus Bitcoin, and the I don't know if you want to say regular cryptocurrencies, right? Because it's good for business. I don't think anyone is going to be able to really argue that, especially with companies like IBM getting involved, because they're not going to get behind something that's not going to make them money or be better for them. But the overall space, I don't know how much that's going to do for the average user, because it's stable coins, right? And even though stable coins are popular, they're not so popular that a lot of people are holding them. And we look at news like this and we think that's going to drive up the price.
It's not about holding stable. I mean, the use case for stable coins is that it's a hedge against the volatility of the traditional markets. If it's backed, or if it's pegged to fiat, and you trust that the stable coin is going to work, then it's a way to hedge against the Bitcoin price moving up by $1,000 in a day, or moving down, I should say. If you want
you don't want to hedge against it moving up, you're right.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing, is that the hedging part is it. I remember I had seen it once where they said stable coins are like going to the pool and only putting your feet in the water. You got wet, but you didn't swim.
Well, I mean, I know that when stablecoin coins first emerged and people really looked down on them and they were like, it's not a real cryptocurrency. And you could say, sure, it's not a real cryptocurrency in a way, if you look at it in a certain way, but this has provided a real use case for people. This has actually been an interesting tool. And Zaphod, you brought up last week, you said that when Tether first came about in 2016, was it 2017? People thought that stablecoins would be particularly useful because it's a way to go in and out of fiat, kind of, without actually entering back into the traditional financial system, because I thought it would be a way around paying capital gains tax. It would only be a taxable event if you went in and out of fiat, and that actually wasn't the case. We found out that as soon as you traded your Bitcoin into any other currency, it was a taxable event. So that use case kind of disappeared for people, but at the same time, it still has tremendous use case for people, because you save on the fees and the friction that come with going in and out of traditional finance.
Well, it's it's a big, not just fees, but also ease. I can't go to most of these exchanges and actually get real USD, but I can go to USDT and just sit there for a bit. So it really helps the day traders, sit in a more or less stable asset overnight when they're not trading. Right. And it helps continue that stability. The biggest thing about this article that I liked initially was simple, like, yay, it's not Ripple, because Ripple. Oh, wait, we're not even going to talk about the article that came out last week about how all of the Ripple army is bots, but that's okay.
You're going to get some mean messages on Twitter. It's XRP.
Oh no,
mean messages on Twitter.
I'll brace for impact.
Oh my gosh, that's never happened to me before.
Oh yeah. But this is Ripple's. This is Stellar Lumen's purpose in being an intermediary, and that's what they were building it for. That's what they're trying to do. A couple things that stuck out to me about this article was that they can't do anything in the U.S. yet because they don't have approval from U.S. regulators. It's just one other way that the United States is falling behind in this game because of our regulatory burden. I mean, even Europe, as much as people talk bad about the Eurozone, it's easier for people to exchange for crypto in Europe than it is in the U.S. And it's a pain. It's just frustrating as somebody who happens to live in the United States that it is so hard for me to live on crypto because we're strangled by the regulation. Right. So I like that banks are doing this more, as much as I like banks anyway, because inevitable this will happen. I like that companies are working with this more. These stable coins, banks, when they're doing transfers between banks, they don't want to deal with the volatility of crypto. They want a stable coin, so it's obvious that they're going to use a stable coin for interbank transfers. They're really just trying to save on the overhead of international wires that can touch a half dozen banks in the process of moving between here and there, have potential for issues at any one of those steps, cost a bunch of money, and take a week. Right. So this is something that is supposed to grease the chain of international business and international supply chains.
Yeah.
So
let's
this is their purpose.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. We'll keep an eye on it. I'm sure none of us are that excited about this stuff, but it is interesting, as I said, to see that competition out there as well. And we'll see. I mean, all of these going to survive? Is just a couple of players going to survive? We're going to have to see what evolves in this ecosystem. But let's move on. So Block CEO Jeff Garzik subpoenaed over Craig Wright's Satoshi claim. So apparently, when Satoshi was saying that. When Satoshi was saying, God, that was a terrible slip. Did not mean to say that. When Craig Wright, when fake Toshi, thank you. When Craig Wright claimed he is Satoshi Nakamoto, he claimed that he created it with the late Dave Kleiman. And so apparently now Kleiman's brother is suing Craig Wright for billions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency, worth of Bitcoin, and but also suing him over IP infringement. It's like this strange thing that's going on. Have you guys looked into this at all?
Well, I saw the IP infringement, but okay, so is he saying that Satoshi Nakamoto is the IP, or is Bitcoin the IP? I mean, what is he? I get that he's suing for intellectual property, but what? I mean, it says it's associated with the Bitcoin technology, but is it like the name, or is it the code? That's what
I presume it would be the technology, the same way that Craig Wright has threatened lawsuits against anyone who infringes on his IP.
Well, isn't that how he got banned from Twitter?
Is it?
Well, he started saying, apparently he was saying on Twitter terms of, I could sue if you do something. It's nuts. But he got banned from Twitter about a week ago, sometime earlier this week.
Well, he blocked me a long time ago, so I can't keep up with that man anymore. It's such a shame. But yeah, I mean, so this is going on. It's all just part of the ongoing Craig saga. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Because, yeah.
But at any rate, so there were the Craig bots that were repeating everything he said. He was throwing a huge hissy fit over that. All of his tweets were copyrighted. You can't reproduce them to show blocked people what I'm saying.
Right, and that's it.
He rage deleted his account, and his new account is blocked.
Right.
Last time.
Huh.
Yeah, that's it.
Because Craig's hilarious in that sort of way.
Well, at least he's entertaining, you know. He may be a destructive force for the ecosystem, but he's very entertaining, so we can give him that. Don't want to give him too much time on the show. Let's keep going. Got a bunch of stuff to cover still. Binance now lets Australians buy Bitcoin with cash at over 1,300 stores. They've partnered with, and it's through Binance Lite Australia, which is one of their divisions in Australia. And the way that Binance is kind of becoming this decentralized entity, they're in a bunch of different countries now. So in Australia, Binance Lite Australia, they've partnered with a bunch of news agencies across the country. People can pay cash for Bitcoin. So that's kind of interesting. There's a 5% fee attached with it, and if people just want the ease of going into a news agency buying crypto, that's a way that they can get involved in the space.
There's still an account verification process, so they're still complying with Australia's AML KYC laws.
Oh yeah, well obviously, I mean, there's no way Australia would let anyone go buy that with all the shit that they're doing right now. It's just insane. Like I absolutely do not presume that because you're paying cash that's of any benefit to you whatsoever. I mean, it's just an easy onboarding ramp if you want to do it in person.
Right.
Yeah, and there's been a few other countries that have done similar things. Like there's France, tobacco retailers for whatever reason.
Right.
You can do it with smart cash in various banks in Brazil. There's all this ease of access is important. And like I talked about earlier, I think this will be more important when we get to the next bull run of making it easier for people to get on board with crypto. Because if people can just walk to their local, I'm not sure what a news agent is in Australia. I'm not really sure what.
So a news agent. So it's like it's a place where you can buy newspapers and magazines and greeting cards and a small amount of stationery. And sometimes you have like the Australian Postal Service. They'll have outlets kind of tied to certain news agency outlets. You can buy lotto tickets at the news agency and buy scratchies. Do you guys know is a scratchie?
So it's like a drugstore.
Scratchies like a little, well, drugstore is more like a chemist. No,
So,
no.
so it's like a
see,
cross between like
no,
a
it's
7-Eleven, a UPS store, and a Hallmark
there you
store.
go.
yeah. So, but there's no groceries in there. There's no perishable
Yeah.
goods. There's no
Okay.
like cleaning products. It's not that type of thing. It's really just for news and stationery stuff and postal stuff. So a little bit of a limited scope there. And Lotto was like a big thing. Yeah.
I had no idea. That was the first thing that came to mind when reading like this. What is a news agent? Because there's
That's
nothing
so
really like that.
funny.
Well, because like
Here.
when I first saw it, I thought, okay, so I'm gonna go into the CNN office. I mean, like, what's that?
Oh no! Oh, you guys are adorable. I'm glad that I'm here to translate these things for all of you. It's yeah. I didn't think that would be a translation issue. And yeah, no, it's not a drugstore. So drugstore, and if you're Australian watching this, we're not talking about like marijuana or heroin or anything. A drugstore in America is like a place where you can kind of buy a small amount of groceries and get pharmaceuticals, and it's kind of like a chemist, but with like they've got increased functionality. You can buy more things at them. So chemist
with the
is
freezer section.
yeah. right. So yeah, that's cool. Just another onboarding mechanism there. Let's keep going because we're running out of time here. So Casa, they've just branded, they put out a bunch of Faraday bags, which is interesting. I love the idea of Faraday bags. I think they're awesome. I think that it's great for increasing your own personal security. There's increased functionality on them in that it doesn't just block waves. Like if you don't know what a Faraday bag is, like look up Faraday cage, and it's a way of blocking transmission so that, for example, if you're carrying around your phone with you, if you don't want it listening to you at all times, then you probably want to block the signals going to it. Even if you turn your phone off, it doesn't matter. It can still be accessed. Cameras can still be accessed. Microphones can still be accessed. So if it's in a bag that stops the transmission of the signals, then you're able to actually cut that out. Kind of like a mini microwave you're carrying around that nothing can get through it. So, but you can't heat up your food. It doesn't work that way. So Faraday cages, Faraday bags, very interesting. What?
Actually, if you put the Faraday bag in your microwave, you couldn't heat up the thing in it. So, you know.
That's interesting. So I love things like that. I often thought about like putting out my own line of Faraday cages or something because I just love the idea of having increased privacy and all of that. And this has, as I mentioned, increased functionality. It's not just about blocking signals, but it's also a way of remote wiping your device if you want. So that's cool.
Well, it protects from remote wiping. So say someone wanted to damage your...
Oh, I totally misread that. I thought there was like an added thing that you could like...
Yeah.
No.
Because I was wondering how that would even work.
So your cell phone, for example, has... there's devices that basically, if someone wanted to, they could wipe the memory from your cell phone. Like if your cell phone got stolen, you could do it. You know, it's how you keep your data and your contacts safe. From a phone that got stolen. A lot of smartphones do that now. So what this does, you put it in there, and someone can't do that. So it basically is just an added layer of security for that.
It's like if anyone's seen the Netflix series, it's an Australian series called Secret Sissy, where the picture on a phone gets wiped. They wouldn't be able to do that. You know, they wouldn't be able to access your stuff and get rid of things.
And for wallets, especially like the hard wallets that are, you know, you plug it into your computer. If someone were to remote wipe, it could potentially take that with it.
Yeah, Faraday cages have been used actually by police for a while too, where they collect a phone, they'll put it in a Faraday cage so that the criminal or whoever couldn't remote wipe the phone to remove evidence. They've been around for years. Cost prices aren't horrible, so that's good on them, but just go to Amazon, search for Faraday bag. They're all there. They've been there for years. This is a standard thing. Apparently nobody else has heard of this. I just on Amazon.
Right.
You don't go to Amazon and search for Faraday and see what comes up? Come on.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. You can tell this is a certain niche kind of podcast, don't you? So when was the last time you bought a Faraday cage for your devices?
I actually have a couple Faraday bags somewhere in the house.
I'm gonna need you to send me one of those, buddy.
but they're cheap, 10, $20 for one that'll fit your cell phone in it. They even sell some that actually has a touch, capacitive inside it, so you can actually see through it and touch it, and it's still Faraday. Again, for use with phones, you can interact with your phone without taking it out of the bag.
So I want to mention, someone in the comments said that if your device can still hear you, it can still sync when it reconnects to the network, and Google catches data. So that's good to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's true.
Google and Apple cache data. Last I checked, Google sends far more up into the cloud than Apple does, at least bandwidth-wise. But at the same time, that just could be because Google does it more often, or they're collect slightly more, or they're less efficient. I don't know.
So we need a soundproof Faraday cage.
Yeah, just
right.
Stick it under the pillow after you shove
your phone has what, two mics on it, one for actual calls and one to just listen for what's around it. So yeah.
So as an aside, I got a couple messages from people trying to power chat and it not working right now. So
no!
I don't know how many power chats you're missing, but showing up. Sorry.
Yeah, so just an update on that, just so you know. So bugs will be fixed. There are a few that are built up, but development on that is on pause for a second. As people know, there are some things that we're dealing with at the moment outside of the crypto world, such as my house being destroyed, that have kind of taken up a lot of time. But as of this weekend, a lot of that will go through. But in the meantime, just try the recover coins function, and if it's stuck in the browser, then that should come straight back to your wallet.
So
and let me know if you have any issues. Pardon?
So you won't get the power chats?
If they recover the coins, they won't. I won't, but it's a way that they don't lose their money. So if they've sent it through and it's just stuck in the browser, then just press recover coins, and it's a very simple process. It takes 2 seconds to do that.
Okay.
But thank you to the people who are potentially sending through power chats. I love people using Bitbacker, and there are some exciting things to announce on that front as well, but we'll get to that another time. So cars are doing this. Cars are, of course, they're famous for making full nodes that are kind of plug and play that people can use at home. You're
have
laughing,
a $300
Chris.
Raspberry Pi. Sorry.
I know that's been building up inside you, and you just wanted to get that out.
I don't know. I mean, if you want to run a full node, then run a full node. If you want to, there's no reason to buy a plug-and-play device to run a Lightning now, particularly with the issue of the Lightning network right now. You're going to have to update it. You're going to have to maintain it. Just either get one of the stupid wallets that handle Lightning for you and make it so you can't forward too large of tips, or, sorry, a whole other Lightning thing. Or
well, don't forget, we have a Lightning rant coming up soon, so you don't want to get rid of all of your...
Save it for that. Save it for that.
So, no, I like cars. I like what they're doing. I think that they're taking away some of the friction that would exist if I wanted, example, like just as a token to say, hey, I'm running a full node, rather than setting up the whole system myself, then getting one of their systems. Some people have had issues, like apparently it requires a lot of customer support to get going. But I do like
the purpose of a plug-and-play device for this purpose.
All right, Mr. Rant. I do appreciate the ethos of what they're doing, and I think that once they can iron out the kinks, it'll be a good system. So we'll just have to keep an eye on there. It's not there yet, but I do like where they're headed there. So there, another cool privacy product they've put out. Just want to mention we just had the first ever blockchain vote in Tezos. This is a project that I'm particularly excited about. They've gotten a bad rap, and unfairly so, on what's happened. People seem to conflate a protocol's foundation and the actual protocol, and they are not one and the same thing. So Tezos did have some issues with their foundation in the past, and the actual protocol is a very interesting one, and something that I'm excited about. A bunch of my friends work on it. I think it's something not to dismiss. So I'm excited that they're now actually testing it out. They had their first vote. They were trying to roll out some system upgrades, and they voted on which direction they were going to go in, and they called it the two systems Athens A and Athens B, which I think is a nice hat tip to how voting and everything sort of began in the past. So what are your thoughts on that, guys? Just a passing comment before we go on.
I love voting in the blockchain space. It sounds like they had almost 50% participation, which beats most out there, but maybe that's just because the only people who are still holding tokens are the people who care.
Right.
So good for them. Yay for voting.
Yeah.
Well, and then the people who abstained, I wonder, I mean, did they not know there was time to vote, or?
Well, sometimes like it's nice just knowing you have the ability, but it's just a pain in the ass to implement. I like the idea of delegating your vote, so at least then it's not you're not wasting it. If you can pass along to someone who you think is going to do the research and make a good decision, then that's always a nice thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, we'll see where they go. I don't like that they're looking at putting ZK Snarks in because I'm not a fan of ZK Snarks. But we'll see where they go. I'm all for more accountability and more user involvement in the crypto space. So
yeah, absolutely.
Good on them.
Now you can have a lightning rant if you wish, but let me introduce the topic first. So lightning, there's been some pushback because it has been difficult to make payments. Okay, all right, calm down. I see you laughing there.
I'm gonna zip it on this one. Chris is value, buddy.
You guys can't see right now, but I can see all three windows of the cameras right now, and there's a lot of laughter there. So I'm just gonna announce this topic. So they released a new feature. They have aimed this feature at improving the usability of the Lightning Network, and the idea is that it's sort of like in order to spend into a channel, you have to create space into that channel, and there's some issues like once you've made a transaction, then that space disappears, and basically they've created a loop which gets rid of some of this friction. So Chris, I know you want to jump in. I know you do.
All right. The friction is a very gentle way of putting the issues you might have. Now, keep in mind that the original Lightning torch stopped working because there wasn't enough liquidity to actually keep sending it. That's why they created a second tiny torch, or whatever that was they were calling it. But I'm just going to read to you something we kind of mentioned last week, but it's good when talking about the issues they're trying to fix. There's 6 potential reasons from a Lightning developer of why your transaction is not routing, rather why your node is not routing, because you can't send a transaction unless you have a node. 1, you don't have inbound liquidity. What does that mean? It means you can't send it if you don't have enough in there. Fine. 2, low uptime. I don't know what low uptime consists of, but apparently you can't just open a channel and then send a transaction. 3, capital is committed to competitive destinations, meaning the capital on your route is going to too many different places. So not your fault, but your routing fault. 4, capital is committed to destinations no one wants to send to. So you better hope whoever you're paying is popular enough to get paid. 5, fees are too high. Wasn't this supposed to solve the fees problem? 6, your inbound liquidity doesn't have good inbound liquidity itself. I don't know what the hell that means. For context, though, inbound liquidity means you can't receive more than you've put into the channel. So an example that was used later of if you're opening a Lightning concert, you want to sell 1,000 tickets at 1 Bitcoin each, you better have 1,000 Bitcoin worth of liquidity already. So if you don't already have 1,000 Bitcoin, you can't get 1,000 Bitcoin on the Lightning Network. So, okay, can you imagine like starting Bitcoin with those restrictions 10 years ago? Like nobody, or even a new cryptocurrency with those restrictions for sending, nobody would use it. So this loop thing here is supposed to fix one of the weaknesses where, so you have a channel, somebody has sent you a payment, you can't get the payment because you don't have enough inbound liquidity. In the past, you had to close the channel, which is a Bitcoin transaction, and then reopen the channel with enough liquidity, which is another Bitcoin transaction. And that's, huge overhead. So this is sort of a basic, like, oh, I already have a channel. I don't have enough funds in the channel, so I can put more into it, which is sort of one of those basic functionality things that I think is necessary if Lightning is ever going to get anywhere. It's just sort of silly that it's trying to get around really stupid restrictions. The other thing I loved about the quote here was it said, Lightning channels are like tubes of money. And I couldn't help but think of good old Senator Ted Stevens a decade or so ago calling the internet a series of tubes.
Because I remember that. Okay.
So I just, on the back end of that giant rant, that was quite epic. Chris. So there are issues there. I just want to reiterate that I hope that Lightning works. So at the moment there's some friction, there's some issues there. I am hopeful, and if it works, it's going to be great. But it's new, and they're still working through a lot of this stuff. So the idea with Lightning Loop is that inbound capacity can be withdrawn so that users can keep using the same payment channel to receive Bitcoin. So you can move funds out kind of like into a wallet, and you can move it out in terms of like cold storage or fiat or via an exchange, but emptying that channel allows you to receive more payments. So that's the idea with this new thing. I think I'm going to be doing an episode just on Lightning, kind of going into that, and we can look at some of the pros and cons. But I can see, Chris, you got a lot of cons there, which is, I mean, it's fair enough. There are a lot of issues at the moment, but I do hope that they get smoothed out, and I will just have to keep an eye on it to see how it all goes. I can see you shaking your head.
Inbound liquidity requirements is the stupidest thing ever.
Okay, but that's how it works, and maybe they'll figure it out, and maybe it'll
work great for banks with a lot of money.
It will work great for them. But we'll keep an eye on that, and maybe chat further about that in a later episode. Moving on, let's quickly talk about Mt. Gox before we head off. So we've been following this now. So the trustee has approved creditor claims worth billions of dollars. That's all going through. Some of my friends actually messaged me and said, "Oh, I got this message saying that I have money from Mt. Gox, and because I'm a creditor, I will be getting money soon." And so they're finally starting to move that. But there are huge issues with that, because since Mt. Gox crashed, there have been a bunch of forks on Bitcoin. So how do they assess all of that stuff? How do they pay out different currencies now? It's a very convoluted process. It's not easy to sort all this stuff out. If you guys have any remarks, then go ahead. Otherwise, we'll move on to the last couple of things.
Well, everybody's afraid that this will result in more Mt. Gox selling of either Bitcoin or the Bitcoin forks, and thus crash Bitcoin or the Bitcoin forks prices.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I do like about this is the fact that it's going through a legal process, because these people who open these exchanges need to understand that when you become a money transfer, when you go out of business or have some type of hack or something that loses people's funds, there are legal ramifications that you have to take into consideration before you get into that kind of business.
Right. So let's move on. I want to mention we've got two things. There's just a quick headline. So BTCE, I did an episode on that, gosh, like a year and a half ago, I think now. This was an exchange I did an interview with Maxim Lott, and you guys can check that out, figuring out what's going on there, where they were shut down. The FBI came in and closed down that account, and then I think it's called WEX. They opened up in New Zealand and said, "Oh, we are the successor of BTCE, and we're the same thing, and all of this, and basically they were closed down because the American government, even though apparently the servers were in Russia, the American government said, "Oh, well, you guys are doing money laundering and stuff, and because we're America, we have the right to go into any country and dictate what people can do in that country." That's basically what happened. So now you have the alleged operator Alexander Vinnik, who is seeking extradition to Russia. I think he's currently in Greece. I'm not sure, but people were alleging that he was arrested in Greece. I'm not quite sure where he is now, but yeah, he wants extradition to Russia. But the US government is saying that because they think that he operated this site, that he is complicit in all of this money laundering. Meanwhile, WEX has taken up the mantle. It seems that there's a lot of money laundering going on there, that says apparently they're saying, but this guy is claiming that he's innocent of all charges. He's gone on this like 90-day hunger strike. really, I mean, it's not a good situation right there, and it bothers me. Like it just really bothers me that America is coming into another country and saying, "Oh, you're in Russia, but you're doing things that we don't like, and therefore we're going to arrest you." It's just a huge amount of overreach, regardless of who was using the site. I don't know.
He claims, "Oh, I was just working there and doing my job." To be clear, from my understanding, BTCE themselves wasn't accused of money laundering. It was simply that a bunch of people used their exchange to launder money. So is he guilty because his exchange was used to launder money?
Right.
I mean, it's all sorts of messed up. And I agree that it's like, yeah, he was arrested in Greece. And it's like, should the U.S. really have the authority to do that? To just fine a foreign company and run by a foreigner just because maybe somebody from the U.S. has their money involved in it? That doesn't make any sense at all.
And yet sounds exactly like something the U.S. government would do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then
like the SEC pretty much feels anytime an American dollar is involved, they're involved. So
indeed. Let's move on. I just want to mention this. This isn't crypto related, but someone in the comments mentioned PewDiePie. So I just want to mention that he has more malware out. Apparently, is this battle between PewDiePie and T-Series, which is like this this Indian music label. And if anyone watches PewDiePie's videos, he's been doing all of these battles against T-Series for the most subscribed channel. But now there's this ransomware that was created as a joke, but actually has infected some computers where they lock all the files, they encrypt them, and unless PewDiePie gets above T-Series and subscribers, it like deletes the files if T-Series reaches 100 million first. And it's I mean, it's like, it's an ongoing thing, but I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was funny. But just to end today, so someone also mentioned in the comments that today is the 100th anniversary of Nation, State and Economy by Ludwig von Mises. So that is a nice way to end today's show. Just kind of give a hat tip to Mises.
Yeah, that's awesome. The Mises, for those who don't know, not really the father of Austrian economics, but a lot of people refer to him as basically the person who wrote the most about it. There's a Mises Institute that's worthwhile doing some reading on. He wrote Human Action, which is kind of the seminal Austrian economic book. It's a bit harder to read through. Bob Murphy did write a book called Choices that's a bit easier to get through, and it's sort of a cheater way to get through Human Action. Mises is an excellent person to be aware of in the economic space, big fan of sound money. At that time, it was, of course, gold and not cryptocurrency. But a lot of the people in the crypto space are also big fans of the Austrian space.
Right.
Yep. So, yeah, happy birthday to Nation, State and Economy. I have been thinking about doing an Austrian economics reading group. That kind of got pushed back for a little bit, but still interested in that. So maybe we'll start off with some Mises and get that going, because there's a lot to go through there. And I think it's very helpful for people to have an understanding of economics, to kind of understand what's going on in the world right now and why there are so many dodgy policies being enacted with terrible unintended consequences. So if you're interested in that, then let me know, and maybe I'll get that started, and we'll have like maybe a weekend afternoon reading session. We could live stream it for people who just want to watch, or we could have people on the call if you want to participate. So we'll do something fun like that.
Sounds good.
Cool. All right.
Learning about Mises better.
Absolutely. The more people, let's start a Mises club. And I always give a hat tip. So actually, Jason, you've got a little pin there. Can you hold up that pin? You got to say something so your camera comes up.
Talk, Jason.
Talk, Jason.
While you're holding the pin up, talk.
It's the Naomi Brockwell to the moon pin.
Yeah. So the reason I'm getting him to hold up that is because that was actually designed for me. I made it for my my Patreon supporters back in the day, and it was like this limited edition thank you that I sent out to them for making these videos possible. And it was designed by the people at humanaction.io, which is an awesome merchandise store. They did it as a favor to me. And then I purchased a bunch of those to just send out to supporters. And yeah, check out their stuff, because they have Mises pins, they have Rothbard pins that like look like the Godfather with like the there's a carnation in his pocket. You've got like the Godfather black sweater that's like, it's like a Rothbard Godfather image. It's so cool. They have Hayek pins, they have Thomas Sowell pins, like they have so much cool stuff there. And so I just wanted to yeah, plug them. If you're interested in Mises, then they're a really fun merchandise source to get cool stuff from. And I actually have an interview with them coming out probably next week, so keep an eye out for that, and you can kind of see why they do what they do, what the philosophy is behind it all, and check out some of their latest cool stuff. So on that note, thank you everyone for being here, for checking in with the weekly crypto recap. It's always a delight having you here. We try to bring you all of the latest news, and we're super pumped to be in partnership with Crypto Insider, an awesome news outlet, for doing this series. So hats off to them, and head over to their website if you want to learn more about some of the things going on in the news in crypto at the moment. But huge thank you to everyone in the chat. You guys are awesome. I love all of you. And Jason and Chris, huge thank you to you guys for being here and sharing your wisdom. It's always a delight to chat with you both.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure.
Always great. All right, I will put links to your profiles and everything in the info as always, and you guys go and have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
Sayonara.